Welcome to Music and Medicine on Monday, a collaboration between the School of Music and the College of Medicine here at the University of Iowa. This program is designed to help musicians play and to stay healthy. This video is supplemented with more written material online through the Iowa Protocols, which is a free medical website. You can find that resource on the QR code or the website address displayed below, or just search for Music and Medicine on Monday at Iowa. We are coming to you from the recital hall in the beautiful Voxman School of Music building at the University of Iowa. My name is Harry Hoffman, and I'm an otolaryngologist at the University of Iowa. And it's my pleasure to introduce our featured guest performers today. Fu-Chen Gi is a first-year graduate student in vocal performance, undergrad at the University of Iowa. And Kate O'Connell, a third-year undergraduate with a double major in vocal performance as well as English and creative writing. They're accompanied on piano by Paul Cassiano, a graduate student in his third year pursuing a DMA in music performance. Today's episode addresses medical issues that may affect performing as a professional singer. With us today are Fu-Chen and Kate's mentor, Elise Deschamps, professor of voice at the University of Iowa. Our special guest today is Dr. Ingo Tietze, an adjunct professor at the University of Utah, where he is in the multiple departments of otolaryngology, biomedical engineering, and music. He is internationally known as a performer, scientist, physicist, and the director of the National Center for Voice and Speech. With us also is Brian Peterson, the speech pathologist at the University of Iowa, with whom I ran the voice clinic for many years. He's a clinician with a special interest in voice and a remarkable performer who has on his resume actually opening for Taylor Swift on New Year's Eve in Times Square many years ago. So maybe we'll start with Kate. Before you perform, can you tell us what drew you into music as a career and what your plans are for the future?
Yes, so my performing career actually started with ballet when I was very small. And through that, I think my parents kind of realized that I really enjoyed performing and being on the stage. And that sort of led to piano lessons, which were not my thing. But after that, it became choir and private voice lessons. And I've sort of stuck with the choir and the various performing opportunities, anything I could get my hands on through middle school and high school. And in high school, I was a lot more focused on sort of musical theater, show choir type performance. But I realized as I got into college that I am a bit more suited to classical singing. And so here I am, majoring in vocal performance.
And how about your future?
Yes, I am planning on grad school after I finish my undergraduate degree. And then hopefully after that, I would like to have some sort of professional career in performing.
And that may entail trips to Europe?
Hopefully, yes, someday.
And is opera your
Yes,
your
definitely
goal?
opera.
Great. And Fu-Chen, I know you've had an unusual path to become where you are today.
Yeah, so I got a business degree about 11 years ago, returned home, worked for 8 years, and then realized that what I really wanted to do was to perform because I enjoy singing. I've always enjoyed singing, but prior to that, I never had a formal classical music training. So a friend of mine recommended the University of Iowa. That's why I'm here.
My understanding is you were in business in Kuala Lumpur?
Back at my hometown, which was Borneo Island.
And then was it a visit for a specific performance that
Yes,
led you down this career path?
I saw my first opera back in 2017, and then I fall completely in love with it.
Enough to cast aside your past and embark on a brave new future.
Yeah.
And
no regrets.
No regrets, great. And your goals then, as far as performance, it's opera, I take
That's the goal, to perform.
Throughout the world?
Oh yeah.
How exciting is that? That's terrific. Well, what an interesting background. With that, let's proceed to the performance. Fu-Chen and Kate, can you tell us about the performance you're about to offer for us here? Why you chose it?
we are going to perform O Soave Fanciulla, a duet from the opera La Bohème by Puccini.
And we decided that we would use this piece for today because this is something that we worked on last year, and we sang it at each of our respective recitals. So it's a piece that we're familiar with and enjoy singing.
O soave fanciulla, o dolce viso di mite circonfuso ambalunar. In terra viso il sogno che vorrei sempre sognar.
Brian and Elise, we'll ask for your comments. Maybe we'll start with Elise. As Fu Chen and Kate's mentor, do you want to make a few comments about that spectacular performance?
With pleasure. First of all, thank you for having me and having them. This was beautiful. As always, just a spectacular performance. Both of you, Kate and Fu Chen and Paul. Overall, as vocal athlete, there are challenges, and I think one of the main ones today is perhaps acoustic. In this beautiful recital hall, and we get to perform in here often. We have our seminars in here and our recitals. But I kind of wanted to ask you how you felt about your performance. And maybe, about this acoustic that we deal with here at the School of Music.
Yeah, I think Acoustically, no matter how often you sing in a space, it's different every time, depending on, are the curtains down, how many people are in the room, what is your voice doing on that particular day. So it's just the first, I would say, page or so of any song you sing in this room is always kind of scary because you don't really know, you have to take that time to sort of feel out the sound in the room. And I definitely felt that a little more than usual today. I've never sung with these red curtains down in the back, so it's a different sound than usual.
I was worried about the same thing, about the curtain being down just now, but I thought it's the best that we've done today.
Yeah.
And I could hear it ourselves. But normally we did it a few days ago for a seminar, the same piece, and I couldn't hear as well as we did today.
Mm-hmm.
We couldn't hear ourselves as well as we did today. Yeah.
So Elise, I know with our interactions for the voice clinic with Brian as well, you have had students who have had problems.
Yes.
And do you want to just mention a couple that we might start expounding upon with Brian's input as well?
Yes, that I can, sure. I guess the most common are basically nodes that we can talk about. And then hemorrhage, actually heard that pretty recently. In my experience over the years, that is limited to those two. Dryness of throat. So I maybe wanted to talk about hydration and when to hydrate. Also, when to rest. I think that what is it like to have good habits is something that we want to have or establish. We want to stay away from rehabilitation. And so I think this is what we apply ourselves to do, and this is what we discuss all the time. And we know that every one voice is very unique. It's like DNA. And so we have to adjust. Anyway, I adjust in my studio. I pay attention to that athlete, to that vocal athlete that comes to me. And sometimes they come in with health issues that are not related to just the laryngeal system, the throat. We can talk about allergies, and of course, post-COVID, we have things that we don't really know what we are dealing with.
Well, we'll get a little more into the evaluation in discussing the voice clinic, but Brian, can you make some observations on the performance, the high wire act, the athleticism involved, and potential problems that might lead to us?
Absolutely.
Fu Chen and Kate in the
Yeah, I mean, first of all, that was wonderful.
Thank
It was
you.
incredible. As sort of a baritone myself, I'm always jealous when the tenors are singing in the upper echelon of the range. But one of the things that I was thinking, both with a soprano and a tenor voice, where oftentimes you're sort of reaching towards that upper place, and taking into account how often you're practicing and how often you're reaching to that upper place and really pushing that, with the idea of being a vocal athlete. From both of you, I would love to hear what things you do sort of outside of the voice studio and the voice realm to help take care of your voice, because as an athlete, obviously you're not just taking care of yourself when you're in the moment of singing a piece or when you're in studio or in the practice room, but the things you do outside of the singing endeavors, that also plays into your overall performance with the anatomy and musculature and that. So I'm interested to hear if there are specific things that either of you do to help keep yourself in vocally athletic shape.
I steam a lot, especially if I have a long rehearsal where I've done a lot of singing. I come home and the first thing I do before anything else is steam. I try to drink a lot of water. I don't always do the best job of that, but I'm really careful about it leading up to performances. So usually a week or more, depending on the size of the performance, I really start just water all the time.
Kate, how do you steam?
I have one of those little personal steamer things, and I use the distilled water so it's not particly.
Yeah, I think that's when we talk about hydration, particularly for the vocal folds and the larynx, that utilizing steam can be super helpful, because drinking water and tea and that systemically, that's very helpful, just to make sure you have the hydration within your body, but it's not actually getting onto the surface of the vocal folds itself. And so, the most direct way to get that moisture and humidification to the vocal folds is with steaming. So that's excellent to hear that you utilize that. What about you, Fu Chen?
For me, the number one most important thing for me is to get enough sleep. I need my 8 hours sleep daily. Yeah, especially night before I have to perform. Yeah.
What do you find if you don't get that adequate rest? How does your instrument play differently?
Yeah, for me, I don't feel the elasticity in my voice as much as when I have enough sleep.
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, we've all learned a lot from Ingo over the years. He taught me the body cover theory of the vocal folds, the different layers of the vocal folds, emphasizing that the most superficial layer of the vocal fold is fluid, paying homage to the humidification and hydration. One of the things that singers can do outside of the voice clinic, hopefully to stay away from the voice clinic, is voice rest. And the question I'd like for Ingo is multiple questions. I'd first maybe comment on the performance, but aren't the vocal cords meant to vibrate? And is absolute voice rest actually useful? I was taught years ago to give the patient a writing pad and a bell and tell them not to speak for 6 weeks. They'd ring their bell and write something, and none of them actually ever did it. And I think there's been some research that shows that's counterproductive. And Ingo, you want to talk about maybe the performance and vocal folds vibrating in the course of discussing voice rest?
Well, first of all, thank you for that wonderful performance. I think all of us that claim to be tenors would love to sing those high Cs. Let me talk a little bit about vocal fatigue. There are two kinds of fatigue that we deal with. One of them is fatigue, and the other one is what we call material fatigue or molecular fatigue. And the second one is much more difficult to deal with. Muscle fatigue we know about from exercises that we do with our body in general. And usually when our muscles fatigue, they recover in a matter of 2 or 3 hours. But when we do damage to the molecular structure, that takes a long time, much longer time for recovery. I had the opportunity to Marilyn Horne some years ago, and I asked her, what is the perfect time for you to recover your voice after you've been singing for a long time or had a strenuous rehearsal? And her answer was, 1 day is good, 2 days is better, 3 days is perfect, 4 days is too long. Those were her answers directly. And then I talked with Stephen Gray, who was a wonderful friend of ours and also an otolaryngologist and a researcher. And I asked him, how long does it take for molecules to repair themselves in the vocal folds if they are somewhat damaged? And he said 72 hours. There is your 3-day perfect time for full recovery from a very strenuous amount of singing. So what happens actually, as you keep vibrating your vocal tissues, you actually break some bonds between the molecules, and they have to be repaired. And that happens all the time, whether you sing well or not well. And we got some good information at the beginning of our studies from hand-transmitted vibrations when people work with power tools. And we looked at the amount of recovery it takes, after you've been working with a jackhammer or something like that, or any other kind of a power tool for a long time, and there were good statistics and good numbers given for that. And back to your question, Harry, weren't the vocal folds meant to vibrate? Yes, we found they do better than hand tissues or other tissues that vibrate, but there is a limit. And so we have now described how much vibration you can give your tissues based on how long you sing, how high you sing, and how loud you sing. So all three of these work together. So if you were going to do your ICs for an hour at a time, over and over again, you would have to have a long recovery from that. So I'll leave it there for a moment for perhaps for some extra questions.
Right, so some of the recommendations that are relatively simple, there's the arm's length rule, and that rule is when you don't speak to anybody that you can't talk to in a low, calm voice at arm's length. You're not shouting across the room to do it. And the thought about vocal folds meant to vibrate is one cough worth 10,000 words? Is a swallow worth 25 words? It's not sure, but Ingo has this, you call it a bioreactor, I think. You've cultured some cells under moving situations and seen that sometimes that little bit of movement actually is pretty good for the cells to be working. So another set of questions really come on with respect to the evaluation and management of hoarseness voice problems. And maybe I should ask Brian, what do you think the threshold should be for a look at the larynx? As a laryngologist, speech pathologist, that's what we do all day long, is image the larynx. And to treat somebody without actually seeing the vocal cords is foreign to us, but very native to you who haven't had your vocal cords looked at.
Yeah, I think, in general, a recommendation is that if you're having vocal issues or hoarseness, that sort of a thing that's gone on for longer than 2 weeks, getting it investigated in one way or another. But I think particularly if you are coming up on or coming out of a performance or a significant vocal need, that threshold maybe is a little bit less, that you want to get things evaluated and assessed. There are a number of different etiologies that can lead to changes to voice. Maybe it's something as simple as you're just dehydrated and fatigued, or it's something more impactful like a vocal fold hemorrhage, or something more long-lasting or even more significantly impactful like some tissue change, polyps, nodules, that sort of a thing. And so I think particularly for our vocal athletes, for our high-intensity voice users, having a lower threshold for getting the vocal folds looked at and analyzed, both with static light, but also with stroboscopic light, being able to really break it down into those fine vibrations of the vocal folds so you can really fully evaluate the pliability and elasticity of the tissue and if there's anything that's impacting that vibration.
From my perspective as one who sees saw a lot of singers through the voice clinic, it would seem to me nice to get a baseline.
Mm-hmm.
On entry into the School of Music, doing a video strobe, and then have that to compare in the future if problems were to arise would be very useful for individual people and certainly for research.
Absolutely. Well, and I think you think of it from an instrument perspective, like unlike a piano or a trumpet or something like that, we can't see our instrument when we're singers unless it's been assessed and visualized. And so being able to get that perspective of, okay, this is actually how I'm producing that voice and how I'm making that sound at different pitches and different intensities, I think that's invaluable to just the long-term success of playing the instrument.
So Elise, I'd like to find out what your opinion is on use of steroids.
Oh,
so singers will have a cold, they'll be fatigued, they'll be a little rough, and they call and say, please give me steroids.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, if you allow me, I'd like to just add to something Brian just said about like an instrument, the piano, the cello, you know, the guitar. The idea behind a singer being scoped can be scary. And so I always like to tell my singers that, you know, the voice is resilient, first of all. And yes, it's strong and it vibrates. But not like the piano, we can't put the lid down. We can't put the cello in the case. And so when we want to scope a throat, it's the individual. And so sometimes, you know, they're shy or nervous. What if something, you know, what if they find something? So I'm actually curious in the data you have, you know, how many singers actually come to you and you're like, no, you're fine, you know, is this like 60% or, and I think it is a good idea to scope, in my opinion, because then you have data, you have a picture, you have a knowledge of when you're healthy, you know. So going back to your question, Harry, I can tell you that in my own career, I took steroids just once, and I did not want to. And this was Cenerentola, and we were 7. Basically, 7 singers. We just couldn't do the show without me, apparently, and so. I'm lucky now as a teacher, as a pedagogue, because I experienced it, and so I think I'm lucky because I know I mean, no voice. I actually had pneumonia, was literally just couldn't able to just function, and was suddenly Wonder Woman. And Opera News came to review that show, and so yeah, and it was just miraculous. But it was a privilege to be singing with. I was not the leading singer of that group at the time, and the mezzo had came from another show from Germany and was actually on steroids, and this was her 18th time.
Oh, wow.
And so I kind of had the, you know, sort of the way and to be careful, like not to take the full dose at once. And so she kind of held my hand and kind of, I think, like cutting it in half or something, and then main dose in the peak of that consumption, and then just take less as you go. But I have never recommended it, or I've never had a singer that consumed or had to take steroids. So, Brian, I'm not sure if you can help me answering that question.
Yeah, I don't have a good, I mean, Dr. Hoffman can probably comment more.
Right, I was raised on the concept that if you had a once in a year type of performance, such as you described, a short course was reasonable to give. And that's the premise I worked under until some recent publications out of New York that have studied it pretty intently and identifying that a brief course, a Medrol dose pack is what they give, makes you feel better, peps you up a little bit, and can help address vocal fold edema. That's what you're shooting for, but should not be given without a look at the larynx. And so that's their suggested requirement, and you see that repeated throughout the literature. And in fact, a trial of steroids and voice rest can sometimes be helpful diagnostically. So if you see somebody look at their vocal cords and you're not sure what's exactly going on, there's some recent literature that suggests a trial of period voice rest, a little steroid, bring them back, take another look, it will declare itself. There was a study recently looking at a group of Broadway performers, and across their career, over 30% of them said they had used steroids at one point or another. So it's not quite as bad as I used to think it was, but the concept of having a team help our athletes get through. And so the team is the laryngologist, the speech pathologist, and then the mentor, the vocal coach, the teacher of singing, that really is the person who's closest to the performers and the one that can offer the most insight, perhaps with some guidance from the speech pathologist and the laryngologist. So if that approach sounds good to you, I believe in that. And it's actually expounded in real detail in the Music and Medicine on Monday Iowa protocol. If you wish to search for that, you'll see quite a bit of reference to it. So there's other medications that performers use, and maybe all of you can weigh in on the use of beta blockers, Inderol, propranolol. I know surgeons that use them routinely. to steady their hands, and it doesn't have quite the negative connotations that it used to have, at least among certain groups of people. Some will use that to get over stage fright.
Yes.
I don't know if you have some thoughts, or you all look so calm and confident. I doubt that you would need them, but maybe Elise or Brian, if you have some students with experience with that.
And once again, I can sort of just talk about the top layer, because I don't know the side effects, and I have never taken them. I guess it's about, I'll talk about my career today, but I have sung with singers that took them on the, so over the year, so I've been on stage with them numerous times, and sometimes I feel it in the performance. And so, but that's okay if they're dealing with anxiety and everything, and if that allows them to be on stage, then it's great. But sometimes we rehearse, and then there's part of the traits of the person that is gone.
Right. You lose some of the edge. Perhaps.
Yeah. So I always advise to find other solutions to that.
So
issue.
I know Ingo is a great performer, and Ingo, do you want to offer some insight about warming up and then potentially warming down? So a recent study suggested everybody who gets a DMA in vocal performance warms up before they perform. Only 25% of them warm down. I'm not sure what warming down is connoted by that. Maybe all of you. Ingo, you want to jump in on
that? Sure. A little bit more will be covered when we talk about semi-occluded vocal tract techniques. But for me, warming up means that you keep your mouth as closed as possible and let the energy stay inside your body and help your vocal folds position themselves correctly, and so that you don't let the sound go to the listener when there is no listener, but you use the sound internally to warm up the vocal folds, to get them in the right shape and position, and get the muscles warmed up. I think cool down is really the same thing as warm up. It's getting the voice back to a central position, particularly when people have to go to the edge in their sound quality, such as belting or perhaps an extraordinary sound that they make in the opera stage. So to me, cooling down, getting back to the middle in your registration particularly.
We'll be talking more about the semi-occluded vocal tract exercises, but can you give an idea of what you would suggest for a duration of warm-up? How long should a person warm up? How long should they warm down or cool down?
Well, I think that's very individual dependent. I can give you my experience. If I have to sing in the morning, I get up at 5 o'clock and start doing small exercises with straw or some other semi-occluded technique. But I warm up in little pieces. First, maybe 5 minutes, then I'll do something else, and then I'll warm up 10, 15 minutes or more, and an hour later, maybe start singing a song or two. And then by the time 9 o'clock rolls around and I have to sing somewhere in church or whatever, I'm warmed up. But most of you sing in the evenings, and so you have the whole day to do small snippets of warm-up.
Great. Kate and Fu Chen, how about your warm-up? Do you have a routine?
I definitely, on days where I have to sing, I kind of just start with very small things as soon as I wake up, and through the morning breakfast beauty routine, for lack of a better term. Just little noises until I get to an actual practice space where I can do a fuller warm up. But being in college, living in an apartment, there's some noise constraints in my apartment. But yeah, just kind of easing into it and not jumping right on the big stuff.
Great. Fu Chen?
I like to start with humming, especially in the shower. The steam, it helps. Yeah. Now that I have my own office, and then I'll just stuff like from the what do I call that, narrowest vowel, like ooh wee, so wee ooh, things like that.
That's inspiring just hearing you warm up. That's fantastic. So, Brian and Elise, do you have any other observations or comments before we start to wrap up this session?
No, I thought that was wonderful, and it was great to hear your perspective on, just the things that you do to help take care of your voice and help take care of your instrument. That's wonderful.
Great. Well, thank you, Elise, as well. And Ingo, thank you for your insights. And once again, Fu-Chen and Kate, that was inspiring. So additional details regarding this and other episodes of Music and Medicine on Mondays can be accessed by visiting the Iowa Protocols by the QR code or the website address displayed, or just searching the web for Music and Medicine on Monday, Iowa Protocols.